sir. All right. So, it's about 1:50 in the afternoon, Friday, February 3rd. It's just a few months ago. And I'm standing on the top, the bleachers in the gymnasium of the high school where I taught. The gym was packed, over 1,000 people, mostly students. And we were celebrating, the end of midterms, the halfway marker of the school year. And as the pep rally was coming to a close, the gym suddenly became silent. I heard the MC mumble something to the effect of, saying goodbye. Before I knew it, I was being called to center court. And so as I slowly descended the bleachers, I felt like each step I was taking was becoming almost weightless. I passed some of my students that were cheering and some that were crying. When I got to center court, I don't know what the MC said to me before he handed me the microphone, but I do remember that a group of a few students approached me and they gave me this. Do you remember your favorite teacher? There have been a lot of people that have taught me a lot of things throughout the years. I'd like to take the time today to thank them. To do that, we all need to go back to middle school. You remember that time in your life where everybody's going through puberty, things are super awkward, and most of us try and bury pictures of themselves. And so it was in my 6th and 7th grade science class in the early 90s where a new student was added to the class. The student had an identified disability. As the disability movement was picking up steam, more and more students with disabilities were included in the classroom. I'm ashamed to say that I, like many of the other students in that class, made fun of this student. He looked different than us. He talked different than us. He had an adult with him at all times to help him navigate the situations throughout the school building, in the hallways, in the classrooms. For whatever reason, on snowy Buffalo morning, I distinctly remember the snowdrifts being halfway up the windows in the classroom. And my teacher decided to put me in a group with this other student. Maybe it was because we were both named Justin and 2 other guys to work on a project together. Well, at first, things, as you can imagine, were really awkward. But ultimately, the project turned out all right. I'd like to think we learned a little something about chimpanzees. Apparently, there were a lot of Justins and Matts growing up at that period of time. But more importantly, I learned from Justin that it's really important to be accepting of others, especially if you don't know them. Throughout my high school years, I volunteered in school classrooms. And in college, I decided to pursue a degree in special education. And in May of 2002, when all of my other classmates were partying and getting ready to graduate, don't worry, I partied plenty. I found myself driving throughout the state of Virginia looking for a job. And I was happy to accept an offer in a school district outside of Richmond, Virginia. So as soon as I got back to my hotel room, I got on the phone, I called my father. I said, "Dad, I'm going to make it in the real world. I got a job." Thinking he'd be, happy that I'd, be out of the house, in his just sort of calm, fatherly voice said to me, "Well, son, I suppose you should probably find a place to live now." And the conversation couldn't have lasted more than a minute or two after that. And as I hung up the phone, I sat down and I kind of realized the gravity of my decision, right? I had just decided to move 500 miles away from my hometown, my family, my friends, to a place that I really had no knowledge of. When I was younger, during those wonderful, awkward middle school years, I played a lot of basketball. I sweat a lot during those years, as one does when they play sports, right? That could never have prepared me for experiencing my first Virginia summer. And after I eventually did find a place to live, it's mid-August, I found myself sitting in the car with the AC blasting, still sweating, just sitting there. That nervous, kind of queasy feeling in your stomach, right? It was my first teacher work day. I looked in the rearview mirror. I thought, oh my gosh, is that person going to be one of my new colleagues? You know, as I entered the building, oh God. Oh, I said my fly, right? Okay. Complete information overload that first day. All the responsibilities that I'd have. Lots of introductions. And as I found myself driving home, there's really only one thing that stuck in my mind. You know, that art teacher, Lauren, she's kind of cute. And so I prepared for that first day with all the vigor and gusto. And yeah, I'm actually old enough to teach here, believe it or not. I'm a first-year teacher. I handmade the name tags. You know, I stocked the classroom library with all of my favorite books. Do you remember your scariest moment when you were in school? You know, for a teacher, everything's fine until the students actually show up. That's when things get scary. So before I knew it, I found myself extending my hand to the very first student that I would ever have who was standing next to his mother. Hi, my name's Mr. Roche. I'm really excited that you're going to get to be a student in my class this year. I'm so happy that you're here. Ah! I hate school! As he proceeded to lock himself in the closet in the corner of the room. His mom was helpful. She turned to me, yeah, he's not a big fan of school. Another student, this time parentless, entered, and before I could even process what was going on, he, of course, ran over to the cabinet, started banging on it. I can promise each and every single one of you, there is nothing, at least that I read, in any educational textbook about how to handle a situation like that. And that first 5 minutes of my teaching career wonderfully encapsulated that entire year. Ultimately, it was everything I had hoped for, but it was seemingly nothing that I had prepared for. I'd like you all for a minute to go to a dark place. I'd like you to think of the worst possible thing you could ever imagine happening to a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old child. Now imagine teaching that child how to read, write, learn mathematics or the sciences. Those were the students in my class. They had severe emotional and behavioral disabilities. Things were very difficult, particularly around the holiday times where it seemed like 5-10 minutes wouldn't go by, where one would try and take a swing at another. So I didn't know what to do, but one morning I found this ball of yarn in my drawer and I thought to myself, maybe I could tape pathways with the yarn on the floor and thereby creating pathways for the kids to walk on. And it was just at that moment that Lauren kind of popped her head in, probably intrigued what I was doing. I told her, and there's that awkward pause, what do you say to someone you got a little crush on? You know, I was listening to NPR this morning. Of course, right? I'm an intellect. You know, you gotta sound smart. Yeah, there's this really cool study I heard about. No such thing as soulmates. It's been statistically proven. It's awesome. I think soulmates suck. I don't believe in them. How about you? I don't really recall Lauren popping her head in as much after that morning. But that was okay. I get to see her, once a week as I would bring my students to her art classroom. Later in the year, I had another teacher come up to me and say, hey, Justin, you just won me a bunch of money. I'm thinking, well, this is great. How did I do that, and where's my cut? She then proceeded to tell me that there was a little office pool going on in the building. All the teachers had signed their name on a calendar representative of the day that they thought I would quit. That's how challenging they thought the class was and how little they believed in me. I had made it to the end of the year, to that teacher who I don't even really remember her name. Not really, I don't. Thank you for showing me a different side of people. And as I'm leaving the building that last day, I decided to poke my head into the room of that art teacher, Lauren. Figured I'd ask her for a phone number, right? Got enough courage. For whatever reason, she said yes. It must have been, I guess, what I'll refer to as that NPR charm. And a month later, we found ourselves sitting down to a lunch that lasted hours. We started dating shortly thereafter, and if you've ever spent any time in elementary school, aside from gym and recess and lunch, elementary school kids loved to be a teacher's helper, especially if it means like bringing a note to the office. Well, Lauren and I took full advantage of that. For those of you that are younger, this was pre-texting. We had developed quite an intricate network of little mail couriers that would pass notes back and forth throughout the day. And on Friday, February 13th, yeah, that's right, that same charm coming out again. Luckiest day of my life, because that's the day Lauren said yes when I asked her to marry me. And exactly a year to the day of when we had that first few-hour lunch, we got married. Remember the hopes and dreams that you had or have when you got married to your significant other? Or maybe you're about to get married? And Lauren and I were living those dreams for about 3 months until Lauren got sick. Now, I certainly don't have enough time to go into the details about what happened. And more importantly, what happened is really Lauren's story to share. But what I will share with you is that it took several years for her to even get a diagnosis and many trips to many doctors together that she had an underlying genetic condition that was presenting itself and its symptoms because she was getting older. There were periods of time that were so difficult. Lauren had surgeries to treat symptoms. There was obviously, as you can imagine, a lot of stress. There are chunks of weeks or months that neither of us really remember. And I tried to be there for Lauren. I tried to be a good husband. I definitely wasn't. Through it all, though, she was always there for me and continues to be there for me to this day. As I continued to teach and hone my craft, I became a better teacher. I truly love teaching. I found myself at York High School teaching advanced mathematics, and those students were fantastic. I learned something from them every day. Most importantly, they taught me to not take myself so seriously. But what do you do when you love your job, but circumstances out of your control change the trajectory of your life or the life that you've created with your love? With Lauren's love and support and encouragement, I decided it was time to make a move. And I started taking night classes in business, preparing to transition out. And this past fall, I realized in my heart it was probably going to be my last year teaching, because I'd be graduating in the summer of 2017. And while I struggled at first, it was again Lauren's support and love and encouragement that nudged me in the right direction. And so September and October, November, December, I spent hours applying to jobs, hours. And seemingly just as fast as I'd put out an application, I would promptly get rejected. Until almost as if it were scripted in Hollywood, just before Christmas this past year, I received some positive feedback from my Capital Group application. And I think it was maybe 38 or 39 interviews and steps in the process later. that I was happy to accept an offer. Yeah, that's right. I was happy to accept an offer, finally, as part of the accounting control team in GPA. I know they're out there somewhere. You guys are awesome. And so, when I tell people that I used to be a teacher, they often ask me, well, what did you teach? And I honestly think the better question would be, what did I learn? And back in middle school, Justin was the first person that really started to teach me the importance of accepting others. And the students I had that very first year that I was teaching taught me the same thing, how important it is to really get to know what's actually going on and why people act and say and do the things that they do. My most recent students taught me to be less judgmental and roll with things. Most importantly, though, Lauren taught me how to love, how to support, how to go with the flow. Just kind of relax. And so on Monday, February 6th, I found myself sitting in the car again over on Robin Hood Road. That same kind of nervous feeling in my stomach. And if you would have told me many years ago that I would have had this as an ID badge to add to my weird collection, I never would have believed you. But this time things are a little bit different because I've got the undying love and support of Lauren. I'm pretty sure that there's no office pool going on this time. But if things do get hard, I'll always have this, which was filled with thank you notes from the students that I currently had and students that had graduated years and years before. It will always stand with me as a constant reminder of how many years it took for me to really get good at doing what I did and all the things I learned along the way. More importantly, it'll stand as a constant reminder to me that as I start my new career at Capital, I still have a lot to learn. Thank you all.
An alphabet. When I wake tomorrow, I'll bet that you and I will walk together again.
Wow.
I can tell that we are gonna
Justin.
be friends. Yes, I can tell that we are gonna be friends.